I was just thinking about how I've been sharing a lot of episodes recently, and really throughout the whole course of this podcast, about different modalities for helping couples. And we've talked about the Enneagram, we've talked about attachment, internal family systems, a few models for men's work. We've really covered a lot. But what we haven't talked about is the core modality that I use, which is Relational Life Therapy. Today, I'm going to share with you how I got introduced to Relational Life Therapy, what I really love about it, and how it's changed my life and the people that I'm working with. This is Respected and Connected, the podcast that helps you create a more collaborative, intimate relationship. I'm Sharon Costanzo, and I'm your no-nonsense relationship coach. I've helped people just like you create stronger, more fulfilling relationships using the Better Marriage Blueprint. My mission is simple: to help you explore the complexity of intimate relationships, challenge your assumptions about what it takes to make it work, and learn to advocate for the kind of relationship you really want. You don't have to settle for a lonely, unsatisfying marriage, and I'm here to give you some tools and ideas about how to take the next step forward. So let's dive in and talk about Relational Life Therapy. So for those of you who don't know, Relational Life Therapy was created by Terry Real, who is pretty famous as a couples therapist here in the United States. He kind of made his mark. His first book that really set the tone for his work was I Don't Want to Talk About It, the first book on male depression. That wasn't the first book of his that I read, but it kind of propelled his career kind of more into the national sphere. What Terry Real is also really known for is helping couples on the brink of divorce. And I had heard his name a few times. I had a few mentors that I really respect and trust have talked about some of the concepts that he teaches, like the relationship grid. Am I one up or one down in my relationship? Am I too walled off or am I boundaryless? That's one of his core concepts. I've heard that mentioned by one of my trusted mentors. And then also his concept of the 5 losing strategies, which I've also talked about, which is being right, control, retaliation, unbridled self-expression, and withdrawal. I'm not going to go into all of those today, but that's kind of the core part of his work. And you've probably heard me talk about some of that if you've been listening to me on the podcast. But I really wanted to break down Relational Life Therapy a little bit more and talk about why it's so appealing and so attractive to me and why it's been so effective in my life and the couples and individuals that I've worked with. So I heard Terry Real speak. I was part of Esther Perel's community, her community for therapists and coaches. And one of the first guest speakers that I saw speak was Terry Real. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is speaking my language. A lot of the things that I've struggled with in my relationship have been things that most therapists have not really called out directly. And that's something that Terry Real does. He calls it out right away. So RLT is feminist therapy, for lack of a better word. And RLT is based on some of these ideas that patriarchy undermines healthy relationships. And he talks about different types of patriarchy, psychological patriarchy. There's kind of this dance of contempt, he calls it, where masculine qualities are valued more than feminine qualities, where men kind of get censored if they step outside of the masculine frame. You've probably seen that. But also, I experienced in my life, and this is something that I talk about from my experience quite a bit, that the fact that I didn't really fit the feminine mold, especially growing up in a very conservative, high control religion, that I kind of felt censured and left out. I kind of felt like my dating options were limited. I kind of felt, in the workplace that I was treated differently than my male colleagues, especially since I am kind of a little bit more direct and opinionated and outspoken. So I really saw that. And to hear somebody call that out and say, yes, this is a problem, was such a relief to me, because I hadn't really ever heard someone who was brave enough to name that so directly. And one of the things that we talk about in RLT and that Terry Real talks about is what he calls the core collusion. This psychological aspect of patriarchy, kind of the shaming of women who aren't very feminine, the shaming of men who don't fit this masculine ideal, get kind of shamed. And then also, women do kind of take the more subservient role in relationships, and they have a lot of pressure not to speak up. They've kind of been modeled that. All growing up, don't rock the boat, don't speak up. It doesn't really go well. It's not really worth it. So we have kind of this subtle undercurrent going on in our relationships. Women who speak up for themselves are nagging, they're demanding, they're the B word, whatever. So this feminine side, this feminine aspect, has a profound impulse to protect that person who's in the higher power position of the relationship, even when they're being mistreated. And I felt like I had observed that, and it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but I didn't really know what to do about it. And trying to work through it with a couples therapist or even an individual therapist, it wasn't getting called out. And it was extremely frustrating. It felt kind of like subtle gaslighting. So just hearing this called out, this conspiracy of silence being broken, was so refreshing and validating to me. And that's one of the core teachings of relational life therapy, that we're really working to break the conspiracy of silence by addressing issues of power and grandiosity. We address it head on. I think that traditional therapy has really encouraged the therapist or the practitioner to work on only nurturing, nurture, and that eventually you'll get loving behavior out of a misbehaving person from all of that nurturing. But what we believe in RLT and what I've experienced in some of my own personal relationships, what I've kind of helped come about with some of the couples that I've worked with, is that we have to address these issues in a more direct way. And the way that we do that is called leverage. We need to figure out what that person that's misbehaving, that has not enough empathy for the other person, not enough awareness of the implications and the consequences of their actions and their impact on others. We have to provide them some motivation for why they might want to change. And it's not always just being soft and nice and loving. Sometimes it's like, look at how miserable your family is. Look at what you're doing to your kids. I think you're a pretty good person, and I think you need to understand this and knock it off. This is not something that you'd necessarily do on the first session with somebody. You need to get some really good concrete data and kind of figure out how the dynamics of the relationship are operating. But it really is so refreshing, especially as somebody who has been kind of in that mistreated, one down position in the relationship, to finally feel like they're being heard and that somebody's really going to help them and not necessarily go ahead of them and take the partner on their own, but to empower that disempowered partner and help them speak up and advocate for what they want in the relationship, to really help their partner see, I really am unhappy right now, and this is what I really need from the relationship. That has been one of the most profound core teachings of RLT for me. Thanks so much for listening to the Respected and Connected podcast. It means the world to me that you're here and that you value strong, healthy relationships. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast and you know that it can help others, please take the time to rate, review, and share the podcast. so that we can spread this message and reach more people like you who are looking for help to create more intimacy and collaboration in their most important relationships. And in order to do this kind of work, it seems kind of revolutionary that we really have to view ourselves as the same as. We have the same worth. We have the same value in the relationship. And I think that this doesn't always happen. And I think it's really interesting. This is one of the things that's been kind of bugging me about what I'm seeing on social media and what I'm seeing promoted as kind of one of the new ways to teach personal development and teach relationship work is this idea of they do it for both men and women, but especially I'm a high value man. I'm a high value woman. And the reason why I don't like that term is because I believe, and RLT teaches, that we are all the same. We have inherent worth and value. That cannot change. We can be better tennis players. We can be a better cook, for example, but I'm not a better person than anyone else. I might even have more moral character or more integrity than someone else, but when I treat myself as better than someone else, or I'm a high value person, I inherently look down on others, and I kind of put that barrier to intimacy is really what happens when we see ourselves as above or below another person. So I really loved hearing that and learning that and just getting that belief of mine valued or validated by somebody with so much experience in this field of helping couples and so much success doing it. One of the things I also really love about RLT is this intention and aspiration that we have to work with couples and at the same time do work that's meant to make the planet a better place to live for everyone. You know, one of the things we talk about in relationships, and I see with personal development often, is kind of this idea of it's very individualistic. It's very much if this relationship isn't working for me, I'm going to cut this person off. If this relationship is toxic, I'm going to walk away. We're kind of talking about personal development in the way that we're distancing ourselves. And I think we're stepping away from relationships that really are workable. And relational therapy teaches us how to work with workable relationships and how to take difficult relationships and make them workable. That's one thing that I really love. I think a lot of relationships end and a lot of relationships stay in this kind of uncomfortable distance, lack of trust, because we haven't really even believed that it's possible to do anything about it, to improve their relationship, to develop more trust, to address a grandiose partner, a grandiose or selfish partner, and invite them back into a healthier state and a healthier position within the relationship. And the other thing that I've loved learning from Terry Real is kind of this trajectory that we've gone through in the women's rights movement. Women now have the power to speak up. And I think, and they still, it's almost even encouraged and rewarded for women to speak up in aggressive and confronting ways to men, and that disempowers the man, and it's not helping us to get to that stage, that position in our life when we really are same as. We can't take the man down to get the woman to a same as position. We have to learn what Terry Real calls relational empowerment, which is to speak up with fierce intimacy or soft power. Like, hey, what's happening right now is not working for me. And this is what I'm suggesting we could do to make it better. I was never taught how to do that. I was kind of either taught, blow up, leave the relationship, or kind of try and be a little bit more softer, manipulative, lower your expectations. If it's not bad enough to leave, you just have to deal with it. That is the rhetoric and the narrative that we're being taught about difficult relationships often, wherever we're reading about it, is that if the other person can't change, if they don't want to change, they're not going to. The only work you can do, and yes, I mean, there's such a nuanced kind of dance here. Like, nobody's going to change unless they want to. But what we do in relational life therapy that I think is so transformational and revolutionary is working with the couple to figure out what levers can be pulled. What does this person really want in the depths of their heart? I don't think they want their spouse to be miserable, and they generally do not want to leave a disconnected, anxious, miserable relational legacy to their kids. So we've got to find that kind of motivation and really present it in that soft, loving, but powerful, honest way. And that's one of the things that I love about RLT is how honest we can be, because we're being relational, because we're saying, hey, I think you're inherently a good person, and this is what's going to happen if you don't change the way you're handling things right now. That's been really powerful. It's been powerful for me. I've had to be the one being called out sometimes in my relationship. My partner's been having to be the one being called out sometimes. And it's really just gone so much differently with this kind of framework of being relational, of empowering people to speak up, but in a more relational and empowering way. And, I've kind of hinted at this a little bit, but one of the other kind of core tenets of relational life therapy is that character traits are changeable. Our character, the way we see it in RLT, is that our character largely comes from our internalized relationships. We have talked a little bit about attachment theory and most recently integrative attachment theory. But how we are raised and how we internalize those relationships from our early childhood has a great impact on our character. And when we see this and we're able to kind of go back and work through some of those childhood experiences and rewrite that narrative, and, the term we use often is reparent that adaptive child that adapted to those adverse experiences and learned how to survive in adverse conditions. When we ourselves go into that with the awareness and are able to reparent that part of ourselves, set boundaries when needed with ourselves, set limits, give some guidance, give some nurturing, we can be more relational. We do have brains that are neuroplastic. We believe that. We believe that our brains can change, that our actions, beliefs, and thoughts are changeable. But for some reason, we get into a couple's work and we think our partner's never going to change. And again, I just want to bring back to this nuance. Our partner will change, but it's not going to go well if we try and control or manipulate or prove that we're right and push that on them. Our partners can change when we start to respond differently to them, when we get support from someone who can see the dynamic in our relationship more clearly and help us connect to what we really want in our relationship and make that contract with our therapist or our practitioner or coach. Yes, this is what I really want. And what I'm doing is not getting that for me, and I'm willing to try something different. That is at the core of relational life therapy. And then the great part after that, when we have that we've gone through that process of seeing, okay, there's a gap between what I want and what I have right now. I have to do a little bit of work, probably with my childhood and maybe even the culture that I grew up with, to relearn some things, to address how I've adapted and coped with these adverse circumstances and how it's no longer working for me to have the kind of intimate, satisfying, trusting relationship that I want. The other thing that RLT does really well that other modalities for doing couples work I don't think do quite as well is teaching specific skills. Okay, we know what you want. We know you're not getting it. These are specific skills that you can use. And I've talked a little bit about some of them. We have the feedback wheel, using the feedback wheel to offer feedback and to make a request of what we could do to make it better. Taking a healthy break is another one, a really important skill to learn. So rather than have this kind of fantasy that I'm going to someday have such a regulated nervous system that I'm never going to get triggered and never going to lose it, we know that's never going to happen. So we teach our clients, you are going to lose it. The number one goal is that not to have both of you losing it at the same time. And when you see yourself going to that place and you're not going to be able to rein it in and be healthy in this interaction, you take a break. I'm sure you can find some more information on that somewhere in my podcast, and I can try and link it as well. But taking a break, giving feedback, shifting from complaint to request, those are some of the specific skills that we teach that help you to really create that kind of collaborative, intimate relationship that I tout as kind of what I think is the ideal for a couple. So we really teach specifically those skills, and we help people get to a place where they actually want to use them. That's the power of relational life therapy. And, like I said, it's made a huge difference for me and my husband. I started getting introduced to Terry Real and his work in the last few years. And then about a year ago, my husband and I went to an RLT boot camp with two relational life therapists, one who lives here locally and another one who is her partner that teaches these classes together. That's been a really great, even just to have that similar language, like, one up and one down and boundaryless and walled off, and delivering feedback, having that common language, the losing strategies, has really helped us to take responsibility for how we're showing up in our relationship and have some specific interventions for how to get through it. It's been amazing. And I've worked with some clients who have had a really hard time kind of seeing what their impact is on their relationship. They do kind of go into that one-up position, and they lack empathy, and they don't acknowledge or understand just how painful it is for the person that they're with to deal with this kind of behavior, and learning how to kind of maneuver through that and call them out in a loving way and help them to see it and take responsibility for it and be more effective and more relational and more loving in their relationships has been really rewarding for me. So, I always say I'm the no-nonsense relationship coach. RLT has been the perfect fit for me and my no-nonsense approach to be able to learn how to be honest with my clients and do it in a loving way, to be able to do some of this work myself with my RLT community and have the support of like-minded people has been such a gift to me. So if you're listening to this podcast and it's resonating for you and you're like, maybe this could be the thing that could help me move forward in my relationship. One of the things I hear often when people talk about, their journey, like, I've tried all of these different things, and then I found the one thing that changed everything. I do not believe that. I believe that every step of our journey, I've done some EFT work, I've done cognitive behavioral therapy, I've done some EMDR, somatic trauma work. All of those things have become tools in my toolbox, and RLT has become a very powerful tool in my toolbox. So I don't want anybody listening to me as a coach promising this is going to be the thing that's going to change everything for you. Because I think that everything that we do works together for our good. And so rather than thinking of this is going to be the thing, this could be a very powerful tool in your toolbox to help you live a more connected, honest life and have more authentic relationships. So if you're thinking, oh, I think I might want to look into this more, you can always schedule a free consult with me. The link to schedule a consult is in the show notes. It's also, I can just spell it out for you, respectedandconnected.com/contact. That's where you can schedule a free 20-minute consult. And just to let you know also, I work with individuals and couples. And what I tell most people, if you're thinking about working with me, again, I don't think this is an overnight solution. I do think that sometimes you can get one thing that can really help you make a lot of progress in a short amount of time. But overall, I think people should just plan on spending several months with a practitioner to get a really thorough look at what's going on, really good understanding of it, and then the approaches that will help to address things. I think the coaching industry has done people a great disservice in these promises of like change your life in 90 days and proven, they guarantee their results, and then they shame their clients for not getting results because it must be something that they've done. I don't want to be that kind of coach, but I do want to help you have hope for whatever you're facing in your relationship right now. And that if you approach things with an open mind and an honest heart, that you will learn things that will help you. And you will learn how to practice some of these skills that are going to make a huge difference in your life. So that's my invitation to you today. If this resonates with you, if you want to learn more about RLT, click the link in the show notes and let's chat. Thanks so much for listening to the Respected and Connected podcast. It really means the world to me that you're here and that you share my vision for meaningful, satisfying relationships. If you found value in what you heard today and you're ready for something more, click the link in the show notes to access more programs and resources to help you on your journey of creating meaningful, satisfying relationships.